Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Beginner's Mind series. We keep getting queries and comments for YouTube videos about all of you people out there who want to be professional speakers and coaches. And guess what? The world needs more inspirational speakers. The world needs more coaches because the more options we have, the more confusion there is. We need people who will help us sort out the clutter and find out the true meaning of life and head into that direction and achieve our true goals. So I appreciate the interest all of you have shown into this profession and being a professional speaker, a keynote speaker, or a life coach. And to help you achieve that mission, today we have a 40-year veteran of the platform who has presented thousands of keynotes, seminars, and training programs in more than 1,000 cities across 47 countries on every continent except Antarctica. Voted as one of world's top 5 sales and marketing speakers for a record 5 years straight. He has co-authored 6 books in the legendary Guerrilla Marketing series, including Guerrilla Selling, Guerrilla Negotiation, etc. The Guerrilla series has sold more than 26 million books in 63 languages. The numbers here are mind-boggling, my friends, and I'm sure there's going to be a wealth of wisdom that you will walk away with at the end of this episode today. In 1997, our special guest earned the highest level of certification recognized globally by the speaking industry, which is called the CSP, Certified Speaking Professional. And in 2001, he was honored as Speaker of the Year by Meeting Professionals International. In 1986, he was the founding member of the Colorado chapter of National Speakers Association, served as president in 1989, and has international acclaim from clients across the world, including Apple, IBM, Oracle, Microsoft, United Airlines, etc. But now, most importantly, after 40 years on the international speaking circuit, he now helps professionals just like yourself who are either sitting on the fence or want to jump to the other side and make this a full-time career choice, or who are already speakers. He helps them build businesses by becoming thought leaders and professionals and leaders in their field. He coaches on writing, stagecraft, and marketing to help his clients create entertaining, engaging, content-rich presentations. In this episode of the Beginner's Mind series, we'll be discussing how you can discover, develop, and deliver your unique message to the world. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Orvel Ray Wilson, all the way from Boulder, Colorado.
Thank you, Simerjeet. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here today.
Likewise, sir. Likewise, Mr. Orwell. It's a pleasure to have you, and you bring with you a wealth of experience in the speaking industry. And I've been a professional speaker just for 15 years myself, and I think the first question that I want to jump right into is 40 years. You know, and I know people probably know the.
I know it's a sickness.
Well, people probably know the glamorous part of this business, right? They see us in first-class lounges and, you know, in large conference halls and doing all those other things, the perks of the job. They see the perks of the job. They do not see the challenges of the job. And I know what they are, having experienced them firsthand. You know, when you're traveling from one city to another, away from your family, and it's just one conference room to the next one, it can be challenging at times. I'd like to begin with, what has sustained you over these 40 years as a professional speaker and now reinventing yourself as a speaker coach? What's been the driving force behind this?
I think that the simple answer to that is just a very deep sense of adventure and appreciation for how delightfully diverse and exciting and infinitely fascinating this world is. I had the pleasure of literally, we did a tour for IBM where I literally started in Denver, went to LA, and then from there to Tokyo, and then just continued west. We had trouble getting visas in Russia. We spent a week in Europe. You know, came back via Rio de Janeiro in Florida, and literally traveled around the world as a speaker. And sometimes I don't know about how glamorous it is. I was doing a seminar in New York, and so I was on this flight to connect through Chicago, right? Because it doesn't matter if you're going to heaven or hell; you have to go through Chicago,
right?
And so it's, you know, I'm late getting there. They're just closing the door, and I'm way back in the back of the airplane. I'm in this aisle, this middle seat, like row 28, and there's this lady in the window seat. She's this elderly woman. She's reading a Bible. I'm like, okay, there's no conversation there. But the aisle seat is open,
right?
So I'm waiting for them because I know as soon as I close that door, yeah, I'm gonna have that.
Boarding
I had my
completed.
name already tattooed all over that aisle seat. And sure enough, just as they're closing the door, you hear boom, 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 and this great big sweaty guy, just stuffs his bag in the overhead, and he flops down in my aisle seat.
Uh-huh.
So he had on his cheap suit, and he'd been smoking cigars.
Right.
And so I'm sitting there reading the New Yorker magazine, trying to take my mind off how uncomfortable I am. And he leans over. He says, "You from New York?" I said, "No, I actually just enjoy the magazine. I'm from Denver." He says, "Oh yeah, I'm going to Denver." Yeah, Mac, we're all going to Denver.
That's where this flight is headed, right?
Everybody on this plane is going to Denver. So I thought that had shut him up, but it didn't. He says, "So, what sort of work do you do?" "Well, I'm a professional speaker. I do seminars and workshops and things around the country on sales and marketing." He says, "Well, that sounds very glamorous." It's a lot of long hours and late nights. It's not as glamorous. He says, "Well, I cut garbage for the city of New York, and my job ain't as glamorous as it sounds either."
Oh my God! Right.
He's regaling me with stories about all the weird and crazy things they find in the garbage in New York City.
And you had to listen to all those for whatever
duration. My ribs hurt for a week. It was fun. This guy could do his own HBO special. He was hysterical.
Wow.
So when I meet people like that, they're just fascinating and wonderful and creative and have great ideas. And many of them are running enormous enterprises that employ tens of thousands of people and give us all the latest and greatest technologies from the internet to iPhones to cat litter that doesn't smell. Like we need that, right? There's a lot of stuff we need.
Right.
So that's what really is driving me, I think.
I love I could feel the sense of adventure that you talked about. I could sense it when you said, "Oh, the world is such a beautiful place to explore," and that's been my favorite part as well. The travel that comes with it. You step outside your normal zone of reference to something to new smells and new sounds and new accents and new sights and so many new things to take in. And I think that in itself is sort of an aphrodisiac, if you will, right? Wakes up your senses.
Well, sure, now.
Yeah.
And now working with other speakers as a coach,
yeah,
I get to be doubly creative because I get to see all of their ideas and insights and their points of view about things and their content. And they're really brilliant ideas. It helps them, polish and refine their thinking and then craft it into a book and figure out, what do they do that works actually? What is their model?
Oh, wow.
How do they convey that information to other people?
Nice.
And it expands their impact. It expands their audience. And it just has this ripple effect through the whole world.
Sure.
And so now I get to have that same kind of power and leverage, but times 5 or 10 or 20 as, people out there who's, I have a shelf of success stories here.
Wow.
Like that of people who have started working and just by clarifying their vision, they also often double their business in a year.
Wow.
Or less. And so that's a really exciting process to see that impact and to be able to that kind of good in the world it's really gratifying, especially
when's the book coming out?
Stage of my life.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I've read so much poetry about it. I've recorded a few poems myself, and I think I don't know if it was Carl Jung or Dr. Viktor Frankl or one of those gentlemen who said this about the second half of life having a strong mission, and it really keeps you energized. And I know people from personal experience, Mr. Wilson, folks who have a mission versus those who don't. You see remarkable differences in health, in optimism, in energy levels, and so many other things, so there's and you found this, you've reinvented yourself in terms of this mission from being a professional speaker and harvesting that rich experience and now contributing back to the community, back to the tribe. When's the book coming out, by the way? This one
I'm
that you
sorry.
mentioned. The book
Which
that you
one?
mentioned. The book that you
Oh,
mentioned about you putting one together for the speakers.
oh no. These are speakers who have written books in
Uh-huh.
order to qualify as in order to grow their business or their practice or their client base. Here's an example. This is Terrence W. Moore's book, The
Uh,
Bulldog Guide to
Business
Business
divorce.
Divorce. In the middle
Uh,
of the frame, there we go.
Interesting.
And I met Terry Moore. I was doing a master class on storytelling
Uh-huh.
for the Minnesota chapter of the National Speakers Association
Okay.
in Minneapolis. We met,
Right.
and Terry approached me after the meeting. He said, I've been thinking about writing a book. I want to write a book so that people treat me like an authority and I can bill more in my law practice.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. Well, so what do you want to happen? And he said, I want more clients. I want to double my billings.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing about $2.5 million a year annualized.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's okay. What do you want? What kinds of cases do you want?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I hadn't thought about that. Well, he says, I do I've had a number of these business divorce cases where, you mean like when you like a married couple, they have a business together and then they get divorced? He says, no, that's a whole different thing. This is like more like two guys in college decide to start a business and it takes off. It's very successful. 30 years later, one of them wants to retire to a boat in Florida, and the other guy wants to franchise out and build an empire. Or they have differences about money, or differences about women, or the differences about, or one of them gets his hand caught in the till, and for any number of reasons, these partnerships don't last forever.
Right.
And when they start to come apart, these cases can be very complicated. They can also be very lucrative for the attorney. Right? So I understand that strategy, because I'm thinking, do you know enough about business divorce to write a book about it? He says, oh, hell yeah, I've been doing it for 20 years. I said, okay, well, let's do that. So we did. It took us 8 months to draft it and put it all together.
Right.
And over the course of this 8 months, he developed a half-day seminar that he could do over Zoom. He started offering it to the boards that certify attorneys nationally that approve their continuing education hours.
Okay.
So he got his program certified for CLUs, continuous learning units, and started doing these presentations over Zoom to other lawyers around the country.
Right.
And within 2 months of the book coming out, he called me. He says, I have to stop coaching with you because I've added another $2 million worth. I have 14 business divorce cases already.
Fantastic.
Who would have thought? Days of this book coming out. So,
it's quite a niche.
there
Business divorces.
So there's another example. I'm talking about clients here. This is Mark Stiving. Mark is he's a pricing expert. He's based in Reno, Nevada, and he wrote this book called Win, Keep, Grow: How to Price and Package It to Accelerate Your Subscription Business. So this is about subscription businesses like, I don't know, say Spotify is just, you pay, or AOL or Amazon Prime.
Right.
And how do you keep your subscription? How do you win? How do you get new customers? How do you keep them happy? And then how do you grow your revenue with that same customer base? So he wanted some help recording the audiobook version of this book. So I invited him. He said, well, come out to Colorado. He came out to the studio here. We spent 4 days in front of microphones, recorded the whole book.
Wow.
And while we were having that conversation, he says, you think this pricing stuff would be of any use to salespeople? I was like, oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Biggest headache.
Yeah. I spent 30 years in sales training. Okay. I was an international celebrity in that space. And you're talking about ideas that are, this is not common knowledge. This is really powerful stuff. So we spent the next, year or so doing this book,
selling
value, how to win more deals at higher prices. And this is all about the idea that the customer isn't interested in your product. They're not really interested in what it costs. They have a problem that they need to solve. Right. They define the impact and the value that problem has. And
Sure.
so you have to discern what that is
Right.
and then sell to that. And this book shows you exactly how to do that. So
It's a great concept there. And I see all of these books solving a problem, specific problems, business problems, or otherwise that people might have out there. And I think it all comes down to problem solving in the end. As coaches, as speakers, as writers, as authors, as bloggers, influencers, if you're solving a problem, guess what? You found your niche. If there is a problem that exists out there and you propose a solution to solve it effectively, or you have experience or expertise in solving it, there you go. That's a niche for you. I'm going to circle back to storytelling. You mentioned that earlier.
Yes.
Yeah. And
stories are really important.
Yes, sir. And so for beginners, let's say for somebody who's not a professional speaker, right, or who's just started out, what sort of stories, where can they look for these stories, and what your tips might be on how to present, how to create and tell a good, engaging story that moves your audience?
Oh, that's two very big questions.
But we could break it down. We could break it down.
So,
We could talk about discovery. We could talk about discovery first. Where do I discover? Are these popular fables or other stuff that I pick off the internet and modify it?
No. Stop, sirens! Whoop 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 whoop. Barbara, red. Don't go there.
All right.
Danger, Will Robinson. Danger.
Right.
Stay away from anything you find on the internet.
Oh, I know.
Have you ever been to Paris?
No. Nope.
But okay, well, even if you haven't been to Paris, then you probably know that Paris is the home of the most famous art museum in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the
Louvre. No, that's
the Louvre. Yeah, very good.
Right.
Ding, ding,
Okay.
ding, ding. Gold star for you.
All right.
The Louvre Museum is also the home of the most famous piece of art, perhaps in the history of art, Leonardo da Vinci's portrait of Lisa Giovanni, better known as the, do you know the title?
The guy with his is that with the surgical sort
Da
of
Vinci.
drawing? Da Vinci's. No, I don't know which one you're talking about. No.
I'm sorry, it was a portrait of Lisa Giocondo, better known as the Mona Lisa.
Oh, of course, the Mona Lisa, right?
The wife of a nobleman, and he became obsessed with her. He carried this painting around with him for 15 years. And it's extraordinary. And if you ever go to Paris, go to the Louvre, I tell you, it can be a very disappointing experience. You stand in a queue for a long time, and then you're finally ushered into this big room, and the lights are dimmed to protect the art. And she hangs in a recess in the wall behind 40 centimeters of bulletproof Lexan. and time has not been kind to Lisa Giocondo. I mean, it's small, 78 by 32 centimeters. And the colors are all smoky and dark, and the paint is all crackly, and it was a real letdown. But in the gift shop, they sell a portrait-sized reproduction. Scientists have analyzed the pigments and digitally recreated Da Vinci's masterpiece just as it would have looked sitting wet on an easel in his studio in 1503. It is magnificent, and it is aesthetically superior to the original in every respect, and it's only 20 euros. While the original, of course, is priceless.
Yeah. And
don't go to the internet looking for material. No.
Right.
Most speakers, we almost all
Valid
start
point.
out doing other people's material. We get
Right.
somebody's books, or we get somebody's tapes. We get, they get their, and we borrow their stories, or we get, go and buy all of the chicken soup books. Read every one of them cover to cover, and then never use any of those stories.
Jack Canfield.
Because somebody else already has.
Yeah.
The quickest thing that labels you as an amateur is being derivative. So discover, where you look to discover your message is in here. Our job is to share with the world the lessons we have paid for with our life.
Wow, that's profound. And those are expensive
Share
lessons.
the lessons you've paid for with your life, so that they don't have to do it the hard way. I became a speaker the hard way. I have boxes in the garage full of paperweights and plaques and engraved pens from Rotary clubs and Civitans and optimist creeds by the dozens. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of service club speeches over a span of years. I had to cancel checks to prove it. No, don't do that. Get a mentor, get a coach, get involved in the Speakers Association wherever you're at. If not, at least join into the International Speaker Federation. You find them online. Talk to go and see other people. Go and study how they use vocabulary, how they use props, how they use timing. But another mistake is that many emerging speakers they start by putting on a mask. I mean, figuratively, they put on their radio talk to go DJ voice, and they have these certain, right, because they saw a Zig Ziglar tape and they saw him, get down on one knee, right? Or they're watching, President, whose name we don't use anymore, pointing this, right? He's standing behind a podium,
right?
And they practice it because they're terrified. They're scared shitless that somebody is going to discover that they're not nearly as smart as they appear to be, and they're going to be found out for the fraud that they are.
Right.
And some of them deserve that. So that takes me back to be an original.
Right.
Everybody will pay more for an original, whatever it is. So, use your own experience, your own stories, your own, look at the uncomfortable places in your life,
right,
where you like screwed up. And, or did you have some kind and understanding person who, took you by the hands or put you back right or fired you from your job and chewed you out. And you took that to your next job and now you're smarter for it. So all of that stuff, that's the best stuff. And nobody else can speak about that stuff because it's not their stuff.
Right.
It's your stuff.
That's a great point there, and you've demonstrated that through that remarkable Mona Lisa story. Be an original. Doesn't matter. It doesn't. If it's old, it's been around for a while. People will still queue up, pay big money for it because it's you. And nobody, as you rightly observed, is that passion, that attention for detail, those things. It will be a whole different level because it's your life. You've paid for those lessons dearly with your life, with your mistakes. So that's a great takeaway there, guys. Reflect on your own life for your best stories. And so the next obvious question that comes up is, I perhaps I'm aware of a chapter where I messed up in my life. I know what I did wrong. I learned my lessons, and now the crafting and delivery of it. So any tips there in terms of, is there a specific format that a good story follows as far as stagecraft is concerned?
Well, I strongly suggest that you look at the structure, the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell's Joseph Campbell's work. Just Google Joseph Campbell hero's journey. And the hero's journey, starts with, the hero is not necessarily, the captain or he doesn't always rescue the princess. We'll put it that way. But the protagonist of the story, the main character of the story, the hero, life is normal, and he's in the village, he's hanging out, living his life, and then something happens. There's a separation event. He has to leave the village and cross over from normal land into the alternative land where the story occurs.
Right.
The Hobbit, the Adventure of the Hobbit, this cycle is a good example of that. Right. This wizard shows up he's sitting in his hobbit hole, and this wizard shows up with a bunch of dwarves, and the next thing he's off trekking across the countryside on the back of a pony, and not quite sure what's happening next. Somewhere over the arc of the story, the hero will be confronted by a monster, and a monster can take lots of forms. It can be a dragon, literally. It can be fear. It can be an anti-hero. Anyway, so at some point there's a battle with the bad guy or guys, and the hero may or may not prevail. Sometimes the hero dies, you know, and that's the end of that. But over the arc of this journey, they're greeted by a mentor, someone who gives them additional powers. Think of Luke Skywalker and Yoda, right? And Yoda invites him teaches him how to be, you know, how to use the Force. And so the hero is given, you know, weapons or given skills or, David and Goliath is a great example. Goliath, the monster, David, the small boy with nothing but a sling. Right. But these things are lethal. You can accelerate a rock to more than 300 miles per hour with one of these things. They're deadly. Yeah. So, but he's given this power and prevails over the monster. But in the process of this struggle, a lesson is learned, or the princess is rescued, or, you know, whatever the crisis was, gets resolved. Right. And he returns back home to the home village to tell the story. Just as Frodo Baggins came back to the Shire at the end of that cycle. The way that Daenerys Targaryen came back to the castle at the end of Game of Thrones. So another succinct way to put this is if you have a hero, you put him up a tree, and then you throw rocks at him. Right? Right. So bad things happen until good things happen, and they prevail, and they overcome. So all interesting stories, really good stories, follow the cycle of this. There's an event, and then there's some conflict, and then there's some resolution of the conflict, and some lesson learned.
Lessons emerged. There's an event, there's a conflict, there's resolution of conflict, and there's lesson learned. And, you know, that's a great format there. And it just brings to my mind how many people are afraid of conflict and run away from conflict and complain about the conflict and troubles in their lives. And look at that.
That's the interesting part.
Yeah. Look at that. That's going to be the greatest source of learning ever in your life.
Nobody wants to listen to a married couple having sex next door. We want to listen to them screaming and yelling at each other at the top of their lungs.
All right.
That's the interesting part.
Conflict. Well, yeah, I mean, it's the conflict, it's the trouble. Do not shy away from it. Excuse me, because a few years later, you're going to be reflecting back on this for some of the biggest learnings of your life. Yeah, you were about to say something.
Well, yeah, and so how do you develop those stories? Notice the stories that you tell over and over again. Notice the advice that you give to clients over and over again. Notice when you repeat yourself.
Yeah.
Because that's the good stuff. It's the stories that you tell at the dinner table at family holidays, you know, again and again. The stories that you tell your younger siblings or your grandchildren, you know, those are the good stories.
Right, they are.
And practice them and take them out and dictate it. Tell them to the video camera. Send them off to Zoom. Have a transcription service like Teamy. Transcribe it for you. Get a transcript of it. Always start with the spoken word first, not the other way around. Because
so not sitting in front of a blank screen and trying to come up with something. Start with the spoken word first.
Stand in front of the camera. Visualize your granddaughter in Indianapolis and tell her the story.
Interesting.
And then, you know, review that and edit that and tighten that up and practice that until you figure out, you find a place in the program where it can fit.
Okay.
Or you take 3 or 4 stories that are of a similar genre, or that are stitched together by the same theme or the same red thread that you could combine together into a presentation or into a keynote speech,
right.
and develop and collect those stories. It's easy to stitch the content together to get from story to story to story.
I can relate with that. I was in Saudi Arabia recently in a city called Jeddah at the invitation of the Indian Consulate Journal there, and I was speaking to the Indian expat community, to the young students. I had about 1,400 young students in this hall grade 10th to grade 12th, so high school students, and we had a major problem with the projector. Now, I don't use a lot of slides. So if I tell a story, I'll have a slide that summarizes the bullet points or, takeaways, sort of crisp and clear in a mind map format, so people can either take a picture or it just helps re-emphasize the learning. This is what happened. So the projector wasn't working. However, I had 3 good stories to tell in this 45-minute of my own college and school days that this audience could very well relate with. So A, I did not need slides. B, I was not quoting someone else, so it didn't matter if the slides didn't work. And 3, it was directly relevant to this target audience, and they were enjoying it, and I could build on the momentum with the audience without falling back for the need for audio visual aid or something like that. So I think a couple of very important points that you mentioned is maybe it's a good idea to keep a journal of what you're going through, and especially your challenging parts, because that could be a good leadership story, a good innovation story, a good problem-solving story later on, especially for aspiring coaches and speakers. If you are in a full-time job right now, and there's a problem that you solved, or some achievement that you made, or even a mess up at work, probably writing it down, this format, is going to help.
It can help you work that out, yeah.
Yeah, add some spice to it later on. And the second, what you mentioned was practice. Dinner tables, family gatherings, camera. And the third, what I really loved is, perhaps that'll help a lot of people overcome the writer's block, is instead of staring at a blank screen or a blank sheet of paper, practice, as you said, as if you're narrating that story to a child. So I really
or an adult, or a room full of leaders, whatever your appropriate audience is.
Yeah,
right.
Of course. Great. Some great takeaways there.
So then, and here's another tool to help you deliver. Once you have this stack of stories, this part of the discussion comes with a handout, and I believe you have one already. It's attached to the end of your left arm. It looks like this. You have one of these?
Yeah.
You got that? You got that there? Okay. So looking at the palm of your left hand, right? We're going to go around each of these fingers. So draw with me that we start with this finger here. This is the introduction.
Okay.
This is something that the MC does, and you write it ahead of time and you send it to them, just like I did for you today. And this is where you get to tell the audience all the cool things about you that would sound like you were bragging if you said it yourself.
Okay.
That's separate. That's the introduction. The little finger here, this is the opening.
Okay.
And you can open with a song, you can open with a poem, you can open with a quote, you can open with a joke, you can open with a question. I hate speakers that, don't you just hate speakers that start with a question? Have you ever had a speaker say, for those of you who never answer our questions, would you raise your hands, please? Okay, right.
Well, I like the speakers. I hate the ones who don't answer that question.
I love to open with a story.
Right.
So I open with a short story that introduces the whole topic. Okay. And then this transition, trace this with me on your fingers.
Sure.
This is the big promise. By the end of this program,
right,
at the end of in the next 45 minutes, I'm going to show you how to make a small fortune by starting with a large one.
Okay.
whatever the takeaway going to be? This is the big promise that makes them go, oh, I think I'll stay and watch this.
Right.
And then 3 silos, right? Story, point. Another story leads to the next point.
Okay.
Another story leads to the next point.
Right.
So you have 3 points, rule of 3, 3 little bears, 3 little pigs, 3 crazy, right? The Father, the Son, and the Ghost, blah, blah, blah. The rule of 3s is unanimous right? They can remember 3 things.
All right.
They can't remember 9 things or even 5 things. This comes out of Colin Rose's work on adult learning, super learning theory. 3 big ideas, 3 silos of content.
Okay.
Right. You may have 1 or 2 more. You might have more than one story here. You might have a slide. You might have some statistics, whatever. But this makes the case to your point. Sometimes they're all the same point.
Okay.
That's called a keynote. Keynote. One note. One big idea looked at from 3 different points of view. Or you can do it chronologically. First, you start with this. Then the next step would be, and finally, what you have to do is
sequential
or problem, impact, or cost solution.
Okay.
If you're trying to sell something, right? Three ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And then this squeeze the web here. This is the call to action. And it's two parts. First of all, what action do you want them to take
right.
as a result of this message? Do you want them to go and vote, or do you want them to give money, or do you want them to volunteer, or do you want them to buy your product, or sign up for your course or your coaching program, or buy your course online, whatever that might be. Mm-hmm. Is the covert part. So there's two parts there. What do you want them to do with the content, and what do you want them to do to continue the conversation with you?
Okay.
How can they stay in touch? They buy your book? Can they sign up for your newsletter?
Right.
Can they give you their email? Can you give them an hour or two or whatever? Find a way to continue the conversation with the audience.
That's very important.
That's built into and many speakers, they screw it up. They wait until the very end of the speech, and then after all the emotional air is let out of the room, then they say, oh, and by the way, I have brought a few of my books over here if anybody's interested. And half the room has already gone to the bathroom. You've seen that happen? You've done that, right?
I have, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Don't do that.
Right.
That's why this brings us to the thumb. This is the big close. This is the strongest. It's also the shortest. Mm-hmm. It's the most powerful story in your arsenal.
Okay.
So we were talking earlier about maybe something terrible happened at work that taught you a lesson. Mm-hmm. When I was in college, I had a job selling books door to door.
Okay.
I know it's horribly embarrassing. I'm so ashamed. The worst kind of books that you can imagine. Encyclopedias. Can you believe it? And so they were getting ready to close the Boulder office because it was the end of the school year, and they wanted me to go to San Diego to open a new office there that I was going to run and manage. And so
it was a pre-internet era.
So the CEO has a meeting with me and one of the other district managers, and he says, I'm going to talk to Jerry here about some of the numbers and stuff. Orville, what I want you to do is go and get a U-Haul trailer. I want you to fill it to the top with cardboard boxes so that because we're going to move both of you guys to San Diego. Can you do that? I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. And so I left the restaurant. I went to the U-Haul facility place, which was still open barely, and rented like an 8 by 10 foot trailer. And then I went to every grocery store in town asking for cardboard boxes. And every one of them had a compacting machine where they compress them all and recycle them. Right. There wasn't a cardboard box to be found anywhere. Mm-hmm. 3 hours I drove around. I drove back to the hotel where they were wrapping up the meeting. I said, listen, I'm sorry, John, but I've been to like 9 places. Mm-hmm. There are no cardboard. They have these goddamn compactors. I couldn't find any.
Recycling. Mm.
He says, Orville, if I can't trust you to find cardboard boxes, how the hell can I trust you to run the office in San Diego? If you can't find a goddamn cardboard box, I don't need you. Mm. Ooh. Had I just been fired? There was nothing left to do but leave the restaurant. And then there was nothing left to do but go look for more boxes.
Right.
So I'm driving around randomly, and it's 10 o'clock at night now, and I drive past this big neon sign that says liquor. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, maybe it's a long shot, but I stopped in there, and I walked in. I said, "You guys don't have any cardboard boxes, do you?" He says, "Cardboard boxes? God, we're up to our neck in cardboard boxes. Our compactor has been busted for a week."
There you go. You needed the one.
We'll help you load them.
Take them all.
30 minutes, I went back to the restaurant, and John was just finishing up his last drink, and I said, okay, yeah, the box thing, that's handled. He says, great. Good job. And he never mentioned it again.
Right.
But that phrase rang in my ears for years. Anytime I would get discouraged or I'd want to quit or I'd want to make an excuse, if you can't find a cardboard box, I don't need you. Mm-hmm. if you can't, fill in the blank,
Yeah.
right? I mean, good people are hard to find, right? Especially here in the United States, our unemployment rate's crazy because you just can't find good help. So whatever. So that would be the example of the big. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure. And boom, and you leave the stage to the standing ovation, and you go directly to the table where the books are, because you told them that you would,
right?
And you autograph them for you, and you'll sell a boatloads of books, and people, and that's when people will stop and say, "Oh, and by the way, how much would you charge to do this speech for my whole work company? We really need this." So there it is. Introduction, opening, big promise, three points, story, call to action, big emotional close, wham, send them out the door.
Great format.
And so if the guy who missed his plane comes in the back of the ballroom just as people are mobbing the coffee table, and he says, what did he say? What did he say? What did he say? You want them to remember. He said, if you can't find a cardboard box, I don't need you.
All right. That's a great story there if you can't find. And yes, of course, it's a story of persistence. It's a story of understanding that you only needed the one place where the compactor was.
And you have thousands of them. You have thousands of stories like that inside you.
No, that's great. If we
you have a lifetime of them.
Dig them up. And I think timing is critical here. The understanding what's going to work where, the sequence and the emotional connect, all those things that you mentioned. And yes, I've seen speakers do that, and perhaps I'm guilty of that myself as well at times. The closing, the call to action is something maybe because it was poor timing or something else, and that because it tends, of course, is towards the end. The closing is going to be at the closing, and then it suffers because if it's poor time management, you're either rushing through it or not as effective with your call to action, and that's a really important part. Should not be overlooked.
Well, I want to practice what I teach. I see we only have a couple of minutes left. I want to extend an invitation, a gift, really, to all of your listeners. I'm happy to give anyone watching this podcast an hour on Zoom, just to meet you and get to know you and hear some of your stories.
That's a great offer there, guys. Great offer.
Yeah, you got blister plaque. Your bubble. That's a great fun fact. But yeah, just send me an email, Orvel Ray, ORVELRAY @gmail, and I'll send you a link. You can get on my calendar, and we'll talk on Zoom, and I'll help you any way I can.
No, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. We are connected with a community of professional speakers as well as a lot of aspiring coaches and speakers. I'm sure they'll derive a great value from this offer. We will share the email address in the description box below as well. So guys, if you check out there, you'll find Orvel's website as well as links to his books and courses and his email ID to connect with him and help you maybe shave off years of your journey of trial and error as a speaker, because it's dangerous, out there on the stage. It's not the right place to make mistakes. You
can die out there. Ask any comedian.
Yeah, right. All right, or get slapped or talk about comedians. So it's been an interesting conversation here, Mr. Wilson. I really appreciate your time. Before we let you go...
Thank you, Simerjeet.
Thank you, sir. And before we let you go, any words of inspiration for people who want to make a difference in the world through the art of persuasion and influencing? They feel they have something inside them that can enhance the lives of other people. And what would you like to say to them?
One of my coaches and mentors, the great Patricia Phipps, CSP, CPAE, Speaker Hall of Fame, the second woman ever elected president of the National Speakers Association. Marvelous 50-year veteran of the platform. We came up in the business together. And she said, always remember, anytime, every time you're in front of a microphone, that there's somebody there who is in real pain. Somebody there whose life is really inside out at the moment.
Yep.
Somebody there who absolutely needs to hear your message because it could save their life.
Yeah.
Or change their life. Always always speak to that person. And everyone else in the room cannot help but come along that journey with you.
Wow, that's profound.
Best piece of coaching, best advice I was ever given.
Indeed.
Thank you, Patricia.
Well, and thank you, Mr. Wilson, for quoting.
Thank you, Simerjeet.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. So we have a duty and responsibility to show up and deliver our absolute best for that one person in the audience, as Mr. Wilson rightly said, that one person in the audience. And others will have no option but to join in on that transformational conversation you might be having for that one individual. You can make a difference. Don't ever forget that. Don't ever underestimate yourself. Know that you have the power. Know that you have the capacity, the tools, and everything required to heal and to uplift. And that's what we need as human beings. This is a time where a lot of people are going through a lot of uncertainty, a lot of pain, and we need that healing touch. It's been a remarkable conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom so freely. Thank you.